Hello, friends. It's Julie Boye here, and welcome to another episode of the Wake Up with Gratitude podcast. Today, I've got a very special friend from the East Coast. Welcome, Simone Knego.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
I'm excited. Simone just really caught my attention when we met. We actually met through a group of people that are looking to connect with podcasters and want to be on podcasts. And I think in 2 minutes of her sharing her story, I was like, yes, please. I would love to have you on the podcast because she leads an ordinary life that's filled with extraordinary moments, meaning that she's just always, reveling in the gratitude of life around her, which is really aligned with how I live and how I want to inspire people in this podcast. She's a wife and she's a mom to 6 kids. And I want to hear all about how, they've navigated this past year of the pandemic with those beautiful moments with her family. 3 dogs. I thought one was a lot. And she's a serial entrepreneur. And she released a book just at the end of 2020. Her book is called The Extraordinary Unordinary You. Follow your own path, discover your journey. I know we're going to get into all the little details, but I love starting the podcast with a little bit of your story. How did you become this woman who just is always looking for these extraordinary moments?
So, it's funny when I look back from my childhood. I had a great childhood. I had great parents, and as I grew up, I think that I struggled quite a bit with who I thought I should be versus who I wanted to be. So it kind of took me a while to understand that what my value is, how important it is to look at myself and say, I matter, I'm important, and that I really need to do what I want to do and figure out where I want to be. And so I kind of went along this path, and I've tried a bunch of different businesses, um, and that was great, but I really still wasn't where I wanted to be. I have 6 children, and we can definitely talk about that. But it was really kind of in the discovery of who I am and kind of looking at myself and saying, you don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. You know, again, show gratitude. You are you. You don't need to try to be anybody else. And through that kind of looking at myself, that's kind of how I figured out this is where I'm meant to be. And really, what I love and what I'm thankful for are moments like this where I get to meet someone new, have an amazing conversation, because I truly believe you learn something from everyone you meet.
Oh, absolutely. And that to me, especially in this time in this past year where our world has really
Yeah.
become virtual, I really miss those like random grocery store and coffee shop conversations or going to a conference and having lunch with someone you just met for the first time. Like those, I really miss those things. So you're right. Like part of the reason that I do this podcast is because I have the opportunity to get to know
Yeah.
people in a really, really intimate way but then we end up sharing these conversations with thousands of people and impact their lives. Like you said, even if we only impact one person, it's made a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though, as a kid, did you always say, I want to have a really big family and lots of kids?
No, never. I have one sister, and my husband has one sister, and no, it was really never the thought. And then once we had one, where I was like, oh, I love this. I think I could have a big family. And my husband was like, I think we're good with one. That didn't work.
No, obviously. Wow. So that, because I think that's a question a lot of people ask is, especially in this day and age when we have larger families, if it was something that came from the way that you grew up or just, happened and you fell in
Yeah.
love with being a mom. So as a mom, now were you running some of your own businesses while being a mom, or was your focus on your family for a number of time and then you fit the businesses in between?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination, actually. So we adopted our youngest 3 children. So we also have a multicultural family. So we have 2 of our children are from Ethiopia. We have a son from South Korea, and then the 3 oldest kids look like me. Um, but I think that during the whole parenthood, which is still happening every day for the rest of my life, um, you know, I I found moments where I wanted to do something for me. And beyond, obviously for me, is still the kids, but really kind of figuring out what I liked. And so, trying different businesses. I actually, when our oldest was little, we had a horse farm in Texas, and I was a CPA to start. So I had a master's in accounting and I was a CPA. And once we had the horse farm, I decided that I wanted to teach horseback riding lessons, and I created a summer camp, and I loved it. And then we moved to Florida. But for me, that was such a great experience to kind of have that moment in time when he was little.
My daughter would be very jealous of you right now because she's fallen in love with horses and horseback riding, and she wants to own, a ranch, and she's 11 or 10, and she just has all these big dreams about, living on a horse farm. And we're trying to explain to her, like, there's so much work involved in it, right? It's a big undertaking. So what took you to Florida?
My husband's job. He was in a practice. He's a physician. He was in a practice in Texas. And we actually decided that we wanted to be closer to our family. All of our family is in Florida, not my sister. My sister's in Switzerland. But we decided that we wanted to come back. It was really important that, as we were raising kids, to have their grandparents around. So my husband joined a practice in Florida, and we've been here ever since. So, meant to be.
Yeah. And that's, in the past year, being, physically close to family has probably made it easier, because I know that those that don't live in the same state or province or country, I mean, I can't imagine how long it's been since you've seen your sister. Even before a pandemic, it's never easy to fly overseas. And so this desire for many of us to return to family, to be closer to family, is definitely a theme that I've seen. And you shared a little bit before we started talking, a little bit about the gifts that you found and the moments that you got, from everyone coming home when the pandemic first broke out. So before the pandemic, you had some of your kids were away.
Yes. So three kids were away at school, three kids were home. And then when in I guess it was March of 2020, uh, their schools shut down for in-person, and not just in-person classes, but the dorms shut down. So everybody came home. And so we doubled overnight. And, I couldn't imagine, like, when I look back at this period of time, like, what I'm really thankful for are those moments that, my oldest son is 24 years old. I would have never had that time with him. Conversations at the dinner table, really spending, quality time together, because we couldn't go anywhere else, right? We were truly together. We would have game night and movie night, and, really fun stuff that, so when I look at this period of time, it's a time of, extreme sadness and suffering. But I always try to see the positive and say, like, for me, I'm so grateful that I got to have my kids home for, a moment that I wouldn't have had them home for.
I think it's interesting what you said there too, that there's a lot of extreme sadness and loss, but at the same time, both can exist. We can feel the emotions of loss and of sadness, and at the same time, we can also find the moments of gratitude. And I think that's something that I really work on teaching, is knowing that we're all going to experience these difficulties. We're all going to go through these challenges, and it's our perspective that helps us to get through the journey. So speaking of journey, so somehow in all this, everyone's home, we're in a pandemic, you have nowhere to go, you got 6 kids and 3 dogs and a husband in the house. How did you find time to write a book?
So honestly, what a better time, right? Like, I mean, I know that
Okay.
they're home, but I mean, I'm home too, right? I don't have any other obligations. So for me, it was really the perfect time. And what's funny for me, but I think that it's important that, my best moments of writing usually came when I was sitting on the couch in the midst of chaos. So they're all around me, and because it brought back memories and stories that I hadn't thought of in a while, and said, okay, I need to write about that, or this is really important to put down, or something that was happening at the moment where I said, oh yeah, people will want to read about this. So I definitely, and I scheduled it like I would, a regular job where I said, I'm going to be writing from, this to this time. But it is funny that, some of my best moments were sitting right in the middle of the chaos. So
Simone, you said something. It's like, what better time was there? And that is, we're coming up to the 1 year anniversary of the pandemic for most people. It started in other countries, but for North Americans, it was really March 2020 where our lives changed overnight drastically in ways that we'd never imagined could be possible. And yeah, you found this moment and this way to say, well, I might as well do this, even though I'm in the total midst of the chaos. And to have that ability. And I also, many people want to write a book, but you were clear that you set aside time to write. And I think there's a misconception that writing has to come from someplace and you have to always be inspired to write. And that, if you're not inspired, then you can't be writing. But just like any other skill and thing that we practice, writing is something that you can sit down and do and have it scheduled without, waiting for that moment of creativity. So I'd love to hear a little bit about those times and those moments when you set aside time to write. What did you do? Like, did you just know what to write? Were you rewriting things? I'd love to hear that process.
yeah, all of the above.
Okay.
I'm big on saying that, you know, you you don't have to wait until you have the answers to start, which I think is, sometimes I think we feel that if we don't have all the answers in front of us, then why even start, right? But I don't think that's true. I think that it's okay to start messy, and then, go back and rewrite and rewrite. So for me, I would sit there and I would think, okay, here's a story that I want to tell about in this chapter. Now let me talk about why it's important. So I would write out the story first. I talked about the kids' adoption stories. I talked about when my daughter was diagnosed with Crohn's. I talked about, climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
So all of these pieces where I had these stories, and then I kind of worked backwards into what do I want, my readers to take away from this. And that's kind of the theme that really how I tied it together was looking at what do I think is the most important thing that has happened in my life in terms of how I see myself. And really, that theme is that I truly believe that we don't need to change who we are, that we need to change the way we see ourselves. And so when we look at it like that, then I was able to kind of create all the content that went with the stories about my family and, all the crazy things I've done. So,
I'm pausing for a moment because what you said was filled with wisdom. So we don't need to change the way that we are. What was
we
the,
don't need to change who we are.
yeah,
We need to change the way we see ourselves.
that's it right there. And that this book just sounds so
Mm,
amazing to, like you said, finding those extraordinary moments and that we all have it. We all have extraordinary moments
yeah.
in our lives, right? Our lives are interesting and creative. And you said something too about writing for the reader. Like what would someone else reading this story gain from it? What would they learn from it? When you talk about starting, when it's messy, so I often get asked about starting a podcast, right? I started my podcast 14 months ago now. I'm in the triple digits of episodes. And what I said when I first started was, I'm going to just give it a go and figure it out I'm going to give myself 50 episodes
Yeah.
before I make a decision on whether or not this is something I like to do or I can do. And what often happens is it's the same with writing a book. We could sit down and we can make a commitment to write one chapter, one page, or we could make a commitment to write 5,000 words and then make a determination and learn and adjust as we go. And when I got to 50, I was like, I'm really enjoying this
Yeah.
and I'm learning and figuring things out as I go and I'm getting better as I go. I mean, you must get that question all the time, about writing the book and, how do I write a book? It's like, I can't tell you how to start your podcast. I can give you tips and ideas and you can take a course or whatever, but until you actually do it, you don't
Right.
know what it's going to be like for your
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
right?
completely. And I think we kind of forget those pieces, that it's okay to be messy, and that we have to be able to, um, look at ourselves for, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to have failures. That's how we learn. That's how we move forward. And that shouldn't stop us from doing something that we want to do. And that's kind of how I've looked at this entire process. I've really, am I a writer? No, I wasn't a writer when I started this. I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories, but that shouldn't stop me from, writing a book. Again, we are so hard on ourselves sometimes, feeling like that we are not enough, that we can't do this. And it just means that we're not going to do it, right? So I think that we have to look at ourselves and say that we can do these things, and that if we just change the way we see ourselves, that we look at ourselves and say, yeah, you can do that. Do you want to do that? Yes, you can do that.
The do you want to do it is a big
That's
one
the
for
important
sure.
part.
And this is it's a parenting thing as well, is that, allowing our kids to like start because there's this thing about it often with kids where they think they have to be good at an activity when they start it. And it's like, well, no, you're supposed to be bad. Like that, very few people can do something for the first time and do it really, really well. And so that allowing the space to make the mistakes and to do things that are difficult until they are easier it's such a beautiful life lesson. So you mentioned briefly when you're talking about your stories about climbing a mountain. I noticed when I was, looking through at your profile before we spoke that you have climbed the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. I'd love to hear a little bit about, what inspired you to decide to climb to the summit. It's not easy. There's obviously, I'm guessing you had some training involved and different reasons. So tell us a little bit about that story.
So just like I wasn't a writer when I started the book, I am not a climber. But again, I believe in, doing things that we want to do, in challenging ourselves. And again, it's okay to fail. That's how we learn. That's how we move forward. And so a friend of ours had climbed it the year before, and he asked my husband if he was interested. He climbed it with the Livestrong Foundation, Survivor Summit. So raising money for the Livestrong Foundation, honoring cancer survivors. Cancer survivors were with us on the, climbing with us on the trip. And so my husband said, no, thank you. That is not something I want to do, but call Simone. I bet you she'll want to do it. And I said, yes, I'm in. And so I trained for 6 months. I probably could have trained for longer, but that was kind of, when I signed up, that was the amount of time I had. And I just kind of set my mind to it. And, I've had people ask me, did you ever think you wouldn't make it? And that didn't even come into my mindset. My goal was, I'm going to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. And so I didn't really kind of think about that piece. I thought about all the positive pieces of it. And I traveled with, an amazing group of complete strangers. There were 16 of us, and had the best tent mate. Not only are we, you're traveling with people that you don't know, you're now, paired in a tent with someone. And she was amazing. She is amazing. She's a breast cancer survivor, and the grit that she had was truly inspiring. And so, we did it. We all 16 of us, made it to the summit. And really, when you look at leadership, how important, that is in every decision that you make. So in terms of, how do we make it to the summit? That was all part of the conversation.
Yeah. And like, to be, frank, for those that don't realize, there are risks to climbing this Mount Kilimanjaro. Like, you can suffer from altitude sickness. People get hurt. People don't make it. There's fog, there's weather, whatever it is. There isn't a guarantee that people are going to get to the top. And I love that you focused really on getting there and, being safe, and getting back down is always the most important part whenever we're going to climb a mountain. But
Right.
this feeling of, I understand that energy of like focusing on completing. That was what helped me to finish my first Ironman triathlon, is that attitude of, I'm going to finish. And when I would train, I don't know if this is something you did, but when I was doing my training, I would imagine myself crossing the finish line.
Yep.
So I'd finish a run and I'd go like this, and I'd be like, I did it. So I don't know if that came into your training at all, just imagining yourself, on the summit. But it's a very powerful thing when we can really create so many things that we set our mind to. So
Yeah, it definitely was a part of how I kind of went forward with, my training and my journey is, that visualization of that, hey, I've done this. I've made it to the top. Now I'm looking back down the mountain at all of the things that got me to this point in time. And again, feeling thankful that, you know, every bump in the road, every misstep on my journey, I still am at this place, this moment in time. And so it kind of, it all you looking back at all of these things, really made me who I am today.
Yeah. And what was it that, was it just your friend was connected to Survivor Summit, or were you climbing to honor somebody you had lost from cancer?
Yeah. So for Survivor Summit, really, it's a combination. It's either people who are cancer survivors are part of the climb, or if you're, climbing in honor of somebody. And so for me, it was, my aunt had breast cancer. So I was climbing in honor of her. But then what it became, and, you know, I reached out to friends and asked them, okay, do you have a family member that you would like me to climb in honor of? And so by the time, I made it to the summit, I think my flag had like 30 names of people that I was climbing in honor of. And which made it even more special because this wasn't about me, right? I got the benefit of all of these people supporting me because that's another piece is, and I'm sure that you felt this, through your, Ironman. Hello, that's a huge one. But the support that you have really kind of propels you forward, and that was so important to me. Like I can hear them, cheering, as I made it to the summit. I can hear that, and that's such a powerful moment.
It is. And when it's not just about you, my first Ironman and my second one were all done to raise money for Team Diabetes Canada, so for diabetes research, because I lost my grandmother due to complications from type 2 diabetes. And I also, being in the profession of health and lifestyle and all these things, education about prevention and healthy lifestyle was really, really important to me. So I remember this was like in 2003. So the internet was like quite young, but I
Yeah.
like made this website by myself, and I wrote all like the names of the donors, right? All the way from like the bigger
Wow.
ones to the person who gave me $5. And I had all those names like with me. I'd printed out the list and brought it to me when we traveled to do the race. So it's interesting because Simone, I had actually forgotten about that until
Mhm.
you just mentioned about having all those names with you to the top of the mountain. So listen, you don't have to be anybody can start where they are today, and with this attitude of seeing the end, like visualizing where you're going and using this positive attitude and the gratitude and finding the extraordinary moments, you can achieve whatever you choose to. So I really wanted to hear from you, about this attitude of extraordinary moments in an ordinary day. How does gratitude fit into it? You've mentioned so many ways how you talk about gratitude and it infuses your life. I'm just curious, like on a daily basis, how that shows up for you.
I think about it all of the time, honestly. And, again, the lessons that I want my kids to learn about, being thankful for all of these moments, really showing them, the power of the connection for the people around us, going through my day and thinking, I have a choice, I can be miserable or I can be happy. And I choose to be happy because, trust me, there's moments where I'm like, but we all are, right? But
Yeah.
really, when I look at something, um, I think about like, okay, am I benefiting anyone by getting upset about this? Can I help someone by being positive about this? And the answer is always the second one, right? I can help someone with being positive about this. My husband has coined the term that I had a Simone moment today, or I pulled a Simone today, and which I love, right? I'm like, oh yay, I have a term. And he basically, he will have moments where he's really frustrated and he wants to hang up the phone, or he wants to, say something unkind to the person he's talking to. And he's like, and then I take a step back and say, what would Simone do? And right. And so then his, response is, let me be kind at this moment, and I'm going to be patient because this is the right thing to do. And And then what he's realized from those moments is how powerful they are. So, you know, a conversation that could have just been like a bitter conversation turns into like an hour conversation, learning. He's like learning about the person on the other end of the phone. And to me, that's what life is about, right? Like, let's take interest in other people. Let's show we care. Let's, be thankful for all of these moments. And so, that's kind of how I, go through my day. I am definitely, the glass is always half full, and my kids laugh about it, but I think it's really, really important, as we move forward, to really understand that people need these conversations. They need us to be kind, and that's how we should be.
I love that pull to Simone is a positive thing, right? I
Yes,
mean,
it could have gone the other way. Yes, it
it
could
could
have
have
gone
gone
the
the
other
other
way.
way, but I
Yeah.
was like, this sounds like it's a positive thing. So
Yeah.
what a great influence though to have on your life partner. And I imagine a lot of what you're doing is reflected in your children. Um, I look back to, I found some old journals from high school and how negative I was and how, life sucked and I hated my parents and all these things. I burned all those journals actually. And I look back and I say, like, what if that young lady had learned about gratitude? What if she had known that instead of like just being angry and frustrated all the time, she could have written about one or two good things in her day that made a difference. And so the fact that you've been raising this family of, 6 children plus your partner and having this influence, right? This influence on inspiring people to choose kindness and compassion. That's my word of the year is
Yeah.
really compassion. And listen, I struggle too, right? Like there are definitely moments where I look and I say, oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily very kind in that moment. I got caught up in my own things and I got frustrated. So I'll keep that. I'll remember to pull a Simone
Yeah.
in a future conversation if I feel like I'm getting caught up in that. So
Yeah.
we're gonna
For sure. And
patent. Should we trademark that term?
you're welcome to use it anytime you'd like. Actually, a funny story, real quick about really taking a step back and looking at what we're doing in life. And I was in a drive-through for Starbucks, and I kept my car at a specific place so people could get by me if they needed to. And of course, as I was staying in that place, someone cut in front of me and cut into the line in front of me. And yeah, I was frustrated. And so, my daughter was with me and I was saying something and she's like, I think you should reread your book. and then what happened, of course, then I was like, took it back and I'm like, you're right. This is a moment of, you can always learn something and this is what not to do. And we get up to, pay for our drinks. And of course, the person that had cut us off paid for our drinks. So again, a reminder of just be kind,
Oh my gosh.
just like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I love when I get that feedback from my kids. So
Oh, and I actually think those are the best moments, really, right? When our kids or even our partner reminds us, it's like, no, well, you wrote a book about gratitude, so
yeah.
you're not grateful right now, just like But that reminds us that we're human,
Yeah.
and I
And
think
we all are human.
we all are going to have moments where we act. I mean, we understand, right? We can sit here and understand that it's better to act kindly and to respond with kindness and compassion and gratitude and see the wonder in every moment. But we're also human beings, and short of enlightenment, which I'm not there yet. I don't know about you, but not quite there yet.
No.
Definitely not. Don't know if I don't even know if that's a goal of mine. But these moments of reminders, it's actually like reflecting our own work back to us. And because I was really curious to hear how, and you just shared exactly what I wanted to hear, is like, how are your kids, in this influential sphere of your work, how are they acting? So, oh, Simone, there's so much beautiful alignment with your message, with your book. Where is the book available?
So really any online retailer,
Awesome.
you can Amazon, you can find it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Is
And
it a physical and a Kindle?
yes,
Okay.
yes, there's I did not do an audio version yet, but there is, a Kindle hardcover paperback. So,
Okay. Amazing.
yeah.
And whatever country we're listening to, you have the global distribution. Yes.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
That's so good to know. Where do we find you on the socials? Where do you like to hang out?
Yeah. So I have a website, SimoneKnego.com, and I'm on Instagram, author Simone Knego, Facebook, same, and also on LinkedIn. And, I would love to, connect with people. Really, I think again, it's important to me, going back to the statement of if I can impact one person, then, I really feel like, I've done my job, or I feel it's powerful to me. So if you hear me, you want to talk to me, reach out to me. Like I love the human connection part that we are really struggling with right now is so important to me.
Yeah, and you kind of hinted at you're working on some new projects where you're going to be doing some more connection with people, right?
That's the goal.
All
I'm
right.
going to follow in your footsteps. Let's say it that way.
All right. Well, we're excited. So make sure you're following her on the socials to find out what's new, what's happening in Simone's world. Grab a copy of the book. And you know what? Share this with a friend who needs to hear the message that, there is kindness. There is an extraordinary time. We are living in extraordinary times. Yes, we are. Absolutely. And that it is possible to pull a Simone and just see it with a total different perspective. And wow, the person on the other side of that conversation, you're making a difference for that one person today. So much gratitude for you, Simone. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us, for just being full of joy and gratitude and kindness today. I really appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me here today. I really enjoyed this.